Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The US military has just completed its withdrawal from Afghanistan after a mission lasting nearly 20 years. The announcement was made by the head of US Central Command, General Frank McKenzie.
The last C-17 lifted off from Hamid Karzai International Airport on August 30th this afternoon at 3:29 p.m. East Coast time, and the last manned aircraft is now clearing the airspace above Afghanistan. Tonight's withdrawal signifies both the end of the military component of the evacuation, but also the end of the nearly 20-year mission that began in Afghanistan shortly after September 11, 2001. It's a mission that brought Osama bin Laden to a just end, along with many of his al-Qaeda co-conspirators.
General McKenzie acknowledged that the cost of the mission had been high, with more than 2,400 US service personnel killed in 2 decades. As the last American troops withdrew from Kabul, celebratory gunfire by pro-Taliban forces rang out over the Afghan capital. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, is there.
Well, listen, look at the tracer fire in the air. The guns are going off. You can see the streams of red lights. You can see behind me the tracer fire going up in the night sky. All day we had heard the American warplanes circling above the city, flying low as we thought the last American flights were taking off, providing extra cover in these last decisive hours.
Earlier, the UN Security Council adopted a resolution calling on the Taliban to ensure safe passage for people trying to leave Afghanistan. The Council had been hoping to present a united international response to the crisis, but China and Russia abstained from the vote. Barbara Plett-Usher is in Washington.
The resolution says the UN expects the Taliban to allow foreigners and Afghan nationals to leave the country in a safe, secure and orderly way. It refers to a statement last week by a Taliban official who said Afghans would be allowed to leave the country anytime they wanted to. The text also lays out in broad terms the expectations of the international community for a Taliban-led government: to prevent a safe haven for terrorists, to respect the rights of women, girls and minorities, and to allow unhindered humanitarian access.
The Pentagon has insisted that a US drone strike in Kabul on Sunday that's reported to have killed Afghan civilians was responding to an imminent threat of a terrorist attack. Relatives have told the BBC 10 members of the same family were killed, several children among them. They say some of the dead held US visas. A Pentagon spokesman said they weren't in a position to dispute the claims but were investigating. He defended the intelligence as being real and specific. World News from the BBC. Police in the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo are searching for about 20 heavily armed men who raided banks and terrorised residents in the city of Araçatuba. They engaged in shootouts with police, took passers-by as human shields and strapped hostages to the tops of their getaway vehicles as they fled. At least 3 people were killed, including 1 gang member. A huge rescue operation is taking place in the US state of Louisiana, which was struck by Hurricane Ida on Sunday. Rescue workers and volunteers are using hundreds of boats and aircraft to find people trapped by floods. Ida has been downgraded to a tropical storm as it continues to move north. It's known to have killed at least 1 person, but many more are feared to have lost their lives. Israel has said it will lend the Palestinian Authority more than $150 million following the first high-level talks between the two sides for years. An Israeli spokeswoman said the money was meant to help the Palestinian government fund vital functions. Environmental groups have welcomed the announcement that leaded petrol is no longer used anywhere in the world. Algeria was the final country to sell the fuel, but its supplies have run out. Greenpeace described the news as the end of a toxic era. Lakshmi Gopal reports.
Lead-free petrol now!
The campaign to stop selling leaded petrol began gathering pace in the 1970s. The UN has described its abolition as a huge milestone for global health and our environment. Research in the US showed a strong link between the build-up of lead in the environment and levels of violent crime, even when adjusted for factors such as social deprivation. The UN says the eradication of leaded petrol will reduce crime rates, save trillions for the global economy, and prevent 1.2 million premature deaths a year.
That's the latest world news from the BBC.